As an American, RV in Europe sounds absolutely amazing, and it is, but there's a lot of differences between RV life in North America and van life in Europe. In this video, I'll be covering the best kind of RVs for Europe, gray and black tank disposals, electrical system differences, driving the roads in Europe, the camping scene, and so much more. Welcome to North America versus Europe, in RVing that is. Two things are going to happen when watching this video. One, you're going to see the complications of RVing in Europe and say, screw that. Or two, you're going to find inspiration and motivation in the challenges and learn that amazing things lie just outside your comfort zone. Okay, I think the magnitude of the moment is finally getting to me. All right, goodbye, good buddy. Hello, my name is Ben. And in 2021, my wife, Rebecca, and pup, Lucia, we spent a year traveling around Europe. And although we may have just scratched the surface, we have some priceless insights to share with you. He's here! Mwah! We're touring Europe in our expedition vehicle. Well, let's get started with the vehicle. And I always say, let your journey dictate the type of vehicle you need. And in this case, smaller is better, and towing a trailer presents added challenges. I say this because the roads are very narrow, the villages are very small, and the bridges are very low. And I guarantee with a smaller vehicle, you're going to have an easier time navigating and have a more enriching experience. But there's also some critical things you need to know about said vehicle. First off, you do not want to have a lien on your vehicle. Having two names on the title can complicate things when crossing international borders, and it very well may be in violation of your loan agreement. So whatever you do, try to make sure your vehicle is paid off and the title only has your name. Secondly, a lot of globally capable vehicles cost a lot of money. There's people out there with $500,000 expedition vehicles touring the world, but there's a good chance they're doing it without comprehensive and collision insurance. Liability is easy enough to obtain. EU, you can kind of get one to cover everything. Some countries, you get down towards Serbia, you might need to buy a country-specific policy. But when it comes to comp and collision, if you can find somebody to underwrite that type of coverage, it is going to cost an astronomical amount of money. So really, you're kind of self-insuring yourself, and it was a hard one for us to swallow because we were used to traveling with comp and collision, knowing that if something happens, the insurance is there, and it just is what it is, so be prepared for it.
That's an RV.
Now let's talk about the camping habitat of your vehicle and electricity. Europe operates on 220 volt. North America operates on 120 volt. And we've even encountered, just in our travels, 3 different types of plugs in Europe. So there's a couple options, because obviously the solar panels are great, but there's going to be times when the solar panels cannot keep up. So we purchased a transformer box, which we could plug in pretty much between the wall outlet there in Europe and our camper, and it transformed it into 120 volt, so then our battery charger would work. It was kind of a pain in the ass, and I didn't really like the whole box idea. I would have almost rather had it be built in. And then when meeting with Dan from Molly Mish, he said, Ben, your system operates entirely off of 12 volt, meaning everything operates off the batteries. Why don't you just go and buy a 220 volt to 12 volt DC battery charger? And it was like, seriously? No! Now let's talk about the plumbing in your camper.
Turn it off!
The traditional gray tank and black tank, like you find in North America, is not going to work. There are dump stations, but they're more like service points designed to dump cassette toilets, and waterless toilets also work in that scenario. But they're little machines. Sometimes they're free, sometimes they're paid. And the way you dump your gray water, most of the time, you just drive over a grate and a hole in the ground. Let's now talk about some interesting rules of the road we encountered. Some make sense, others just don't make any sense at all. First off, your vehicle, inside it, you need to have vests for each passenger and flares and emergency triangles. And supposedly, you're supposed to put the vests on anytime you're out of the vehicle on the side of one of the motorways. Never saw anybody do it, but that's just one of those things they'll supposedly check you for. Another thing is France has these Anglais Mort stickers. Like I said, not sure if they work or not, but it's the law and you need to put them on your doors and back if your vehicle is of a certain size. What size that is, I don't know, but our vehicle required them. Some countries also require vignettes, which I'm guessing is probably a road tax to help maintain the infrastructure since you're a guest driving on their roads.
Were you really excited about that too? Oh my goodness!
Other countries require dogs to be seat belted in. Now this one I think makes a lot of sense no matter where you are, because the last thing we want to happen is to have Lucia ejected out of the vehicle in case of an accident.
Lucy, you're so funny.
Depending on the country, the road tolls will blow your mind. For example, we went from Milano up to Belgium to pick up Denny, and this required driving through France. And while driving through France, it started off with the Mont Blanc tunnel, which was over 60 euros just to drive through this really cool tunnel and the beautiful mountains and all that. But by the time we made it up to Belgium, we spent over 120 euros on tolls. There is an alternative though, and the alternative is to stay off the toll roads, drive through the countryside, drive through the little villages, and it is amazing. Although life does not always put those type of situations in front of you. And the cost is gonna be roundabouts. There are roundabouts that will just, so many of it drives you crazy, and you literally can cover no ground because every 200 to 300 meters is another roundabout.
Oh, now I understand what he meant by the
petrol station.
Yep, and there's the third roundabout right there.
I knew I was in trouble when he was giving me directions and he said, "F me." Now, speaking of motorways, something we found very interesting is that the semi drivers, truck drivers, lorry drivers, they were a lot friendlier than here in North America. It is a far cry from going down Interstate 40 and you have a big old 18-wheeler riding your ass. That does not take place. I do believe it's probably because the speed limits are highly regulated on those semis.
Ben's first roundabout, driving on the left-hand side in a left-hand drive vehicle.
Yes. I've done it in Fiji, but it was...
You were driving on the proper side of the car. Now you're on the wrong side of the car.
And I am...
Okay, that side, babe.
Now I have to talk about driving on the wrong side of the road. Yes, in the United Kingdom and Ireland, they drive on the left. And truthfully, it was not too hard. You just kind of had to get your brain going the right direction and remind yourself, okay, stay left, stay left. That was kind of the very common theme. And the challenges were making a left turn. And if I was by myself, it would have been a lot more difficult because I could not look over my right shoulder. So Rebecca was in the passenger seat and able to look out the window to let me know if the coast was clear.
All right. Oh, big bus. Jesus.
But, so there's no stops?
No.
Another challenge we encountered, more so, and I'm sure it exists elsewhere, but England and Ireland, two places we visited, the roads are narrow. Then they're between two rock walls. And those rock walls, I'm guessing, were built before vehicles were invented. And in present day, these roads go right through the countryside, and lorries, big trucks like ours, everything is on them. And one could say they're a bit crowded. We had a problem. We bumped mirrors in Ireland. Rebecca took a face full of glass, and it was quite a shocking experience, to say the least, and probably one of our more intense ones.
I couldn't do it. I was too afraid to get my hand.
But don't take this as me trying to discourage or scare you about driving in Europe, because it is amazing. We really enjoyed the amount of ferries. They go across rivers, across bays, the tunnels. They go underwater, for example, the Eurotunnel between England and France, and in the Alps. There are some amazingly long tunnels. I'm guessing some of them probably went for about 5 miles or more. Show everybody how you get into our camp chairs.
Okay, come here.
Come on, Luch, ven aquí. Now let's move into camping. And there are some mind-blowing camping opportunities in Europe, especially when compared to what one experiences in North America. In our first year, we stayed at 5 boat harbors on ocean and rivers, 4 farms producing things like olive oil, truffles, apples, and wine, 3 pubs in England, which is an experience not to miss, 2 cemeteries, 1 next to a vineyard, and an abandoned communist resort, just to name a few.
The star of the show demanded that we plug her YouTube channel and social media. And since we're doing shameless plugs, did you know we have another channel? Check it out for life's most memorable moments.
You're probably wondering, how do you find places to camp in Europe? And it is a completely different set of apps. But the one that proved to be most valuable to us was the Park for Night app. It has all the farm stays, it has some surrounded by nature stays, day parking, night parking. Pretty much it was the go-to app for Europe. Now, there's not a tremendous amount of wild camping in Europe, at least that we have found. And I also say that because I compare it to wild camping west of the Rockies here on the North American continent. And you have the large swaths of land that you can pretty much pick a place and call it your own. One thing about the wild camping scene is I think local knowledge would be priceless to finding these places. You can't talk about camping in Europe without mentioning camping airs, AIRES. And we encountered these in Spain, France, and Italy. So far, it's my understanding that they can be found throughout Europe. But what they are free camping areas for travelers to visit. Most of them are located next to a town, which has restaurants, cafes, gift stores, groceries, laundry, and they're there to encourage travelers just to come spend money in the town. It's a great concept. I'd love to see it here in North America. I just don't think it would go over the same. A few final thoughts about camping in Europe. It's very walkable, or there's good public transportation, which means you can park outside of a city and take a bus into the city and play tourist. Another thing we noticed, this one blew my mind, but in England, the showers at the campgrounds, there were squeegees and mops in the showers. So after everybody used them, they cleaned up their mess. I have never seen that in North America. Last but not least, and one of my favorites, in Spain, people come by selling wine and bread. What more could you ask for? We really loved having so many completely different cultures and foods more or less at our fingertips, because geographically it's a small area, and within a few hours you could be in a whole new country, which is going to feel like a whole new world. Well, there's a lot of us working from home or the road nowadays, and we were pleasantly surprised that the cell coverage in Europe was spectacular. And the way we navigated this is we bought burner phones and bought SIM cards in each country. And what these SIM cards allowed us to get was unlimited data. So we could actually stream almost all of our movies and entertainment that we wanted to watch based off the SIM cards. And depending on the country, SIM cards for a month's worth of phone and data was anywhere from 20 to about 50, 60 bucks. So really not that bad. I do have to note, Starlink is changing things. So I hope to get that on our camper fairly soon. And the way we operated our phones is the burners, or if you have Starlink, make a hotspot and then Wi-Fi calling is turned on our phones. So literally our phones were able to work just like normal. Let's talk about the European continent as a whole. Generally speaking, it is a lot further north than the lower 48 of the United States, which means it's harder to escape winter conditions. We spent 2 months in Zadar, Croatia, and just because that area of the world has crystal clear water and white sand beaches does not mean it's warm. It's actually at the same latitude as Portland, Maine. I'd be remiss if I did not talk about travel visas. You are an international guest in these countries, and it does not mean you can stay for as long as you like. In England, we were allowed, as Americans, 6 months. In the brunt of European countries called the Schengen zone, Google it to learn more, you're allowed to be in 90 out of 180 days, and it's a rolling number. So you have to, there's apps that help you calculate it. The apps are a little tricky, but keep in mind, time goes quick. There's so much to see and do, and it's further complicated if you're working from the road like us. So that occupies a significant amount of your time, and it meant that we were passing by places that we wanted to see just because we were running from a clock. Well, that's a wrap for the differences between RVing North America and RVing Europe. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more, go to our channel, look at all the European videos. There's a lot of lessons to be learned in there, and hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining me. Come on.
Let's go. Oh my, we've got some zoomies going on. Look at this. Oh my God.
You are so funny.
Come here.
You did the stone circle.